Marcus Tate had always believed in the quiet power of the law to effect change. After years on the federal bench, he'd recently moved to the suburban neighborhood of Oak Haven, seeking a semblance of private life while still dedicating some of his off hours to pro bono civil rights advocacy. His first act, after settling in, was to hang a modest, professionally crafted sign beside his front door. Tate Law, Civil Rights and Community Advocacy. It was a simple statement of his commitment. The tranquility, however, was short-lived. Within days, a sharply worded letter arrived from the Oak Haven Homeowners Association, signed by its president, a Mr. Richard Thornton. The letter referred to Marcus's dignified sign as unauthorized commercial advertising, an eyesore, and a flagrant violation of Oak Haven's residential character. It demanded the sign's immediate removal, warning of impending fines. Marcus, a man accustomed to navigating complex legal statutes, read the letter with a sigh. He knew his rights regarding a small professional home office sign for pro bono work. He decided a polite conversation with Mr. Thornton was in order. That conversation, however, never happened in a civilized manner. The very next morning, Marcus stepped outside to find his Tate Law sign defaced. Someone had taken a can of black, spray paint, and crudely obliterated the words, leaving an ugly, insulting smear. A wave of cold anger washed over him. This wasn't a dispute about bylaws. This was vandalism, a direct and personal attack. As if on cue, Richard Thornton's voice, amplified by a cheap loudspeaker, began to echo through the street. He was slowly cruising by in his golf cart, a self-appointed neighborhood patrol. "Attention, Oak Haven residents!" Thornton blared, his voice dripping with smug authority. "The offensive advertising trash on Sycamore Street has been dealt with. We will not tolerate individuals turning our beautiful residential community into a strip mall. This HOA will not stand for shyster lawyers and ambulance chasers trying to drum up business by preying on our citizens. This is a warning to all would-be frauds." Fraud? Shyster lawyer? Marcus listened, his fists clenching. Thornton wasn't just mistaken. He was malicious, slandering a profession and a man he knew nothing about. The attack felt deeply personal, cutting at the core of Marcus's dedication to justice. The harassment escalated with alarming speed. Thornton, emboldened by Marcus's lack of immediate, aggressive retaliation — Marcus was, in fact, calmly documenting everything — seemed determined to make his life a living hell. The HOA, under Thornton's direction, began a systematic campaign of intimidation. Humiliating flyers appeared on community notice boards, featuring a grainy photo of Marcus next to his defaced sign, with captions like, "Is your neighbor an illegal business? Report suspicious activity." Online on the HOA's community forum, anonymous posts, likely orchestrated by Thornton, accused Marcus of running a shady operation, trying to scam vulnerable residents, and lowering property values with his unprofessional conduct. The comments quickly devolved into racist tropes and slurs. "Send him back where he came from." "We don't want his kind bringing their problems here." Some neighbors, unfortunately, bought into Thornton's narrative. Marcus overheard snippets of conversations. "Can you believe he's trying to run a law office out of his house? So tacky," one woman said to another at the mailbox. "Richard's right," her companion replied. "That sign was an absolute eyesore. Good riddance they painted over it. Someone should teach him a lesson." That lesson soon involved trash being thrown into Marcus's yard, petty acts of vandalism against his mailbox, and cold stares whenever he stepped outside. The sense of being unwelcome, of being actively despised, was a heavy, suffocating blanket. How could a simple sign, representing a commitment to justice, provoke such ugliness and hatred? Marcus tried to engage with Richard Thornton directly, hoping to appeal to reason. He presented copies of local ordinances regarding home offices for professional services, especially pro bono work. Thornton barely glanced at them. "Ordinances can be interpreted, Mr. Tate," he said dismissively, a smirk playing on his lips, "and our HOA community standards supersede any ambiguous city rules. This is a residential area, not a commercial zone." That sign, and whatever business you think you're running is not welcome here. Frankly, it looks like a front for something illegal." The accusation of illegality was a constant theme. Thornton seemed obsessed with painting Marcus as a criminal. He'd even use his loudspeaker to announce updates on the Sycamore Street situation, implying that Marcus was under investigation by various authorities for his unlicensed and fraudulent activities. The pressure was relentless. Marcus, a man who presided over federal courtrooms, who had faced down hardened criminals and argued complex constitutional law before the highest courts, found himself in a bizarre, surreal battle against suburban ignorance and prejudice. He'd be on late-night calls with colleagues from the Department of Justice, discussing vital civil rights cases affecting millions, and then, in the morning, he'd have to listen to Richard Thornton blaring accusations about his trashy sign and shady dealings. The irony was almost too much to bear. He meticulously documented every incident: the vandalized sign, the loudspeaker announcements, which he began to record, the online slander, the trash in his yard, the threatening letters from the HOA now, filled with demands for fines for the illegal sign and unapproved property modifications. He noted the dates, the times, the specific words used. He was building a case, not as a lawyer this time, but as a citizen whose rights were being systematically violated. The culmination of Act 1 of Thornton's campaign was a formal, legal-looking document delivered by certified mail. It was an official notice from the Oakhaven HOA, stating their intent to file a lawsuit against Marcus Tate. The grounds? Operating an illegal commercial enterprise in a residential zone, maintaining a public nuisance via an unauthorized and offensive sign, defiance of HOA directives, and conduct unbecoming a resident of Oakhaven. The letter demanded the immediate payment of accumulated fines totaling several $1,000s, the permanent removal of the already defaced sign, and a signed affidavit from Marcus agreeing to cease all law-related activities on his property. If he failed to comply within 10 days, the HOA would proceed with the lawsuit, seeking not only the fines but also his eviction from Oakhaven. Eviction for a sign, for wanting to offer free legal help in civil rights matters. Marcus read the letter, a cold, hard anger settling in his chest. Richard Thornton wasn't just a busybody. He was a bully, drunk on his petty power, using the HOA as his personal weapon to enforce his prejudiced worldview. He had mistaken Marcus's calm demeanor, his preference for reasoned argument, for weakness. He had no idea who he was truly dealing with. He had no idea that the shyster lawyer he was trying to run out of town was, in fact, a guardian of the very laws Thornton was so flagrantly breaking. The stage was being set for a courtroom drama, but not the one Richard Thornton was envisioning. The Oakhaven HOA's official threat of a lawsuit, far from intimidating Marcus Tate, served only to sharpen his focus. He sent a polite, formally worded letter acknowledging receipt of their correspondence and stating his intent to vigorously defend his rights, asserting that his pro bono advocacy sign was well within legal and ethical guidelines. Richard Thornton, predictably, interpreted this calm, legalistic response as sheer arrogance. "He's mocking us," Richard fumed to his HOA board, a collection of individuals who either shared his prejudices or were too timid to oppose his increasingly erratic behavior. "He thinks his fancy lawyer talk can scare us off. Well, he's got another thing coming. We're going to bury him in legal fees and run him out of Oakhaven on a rail." To bolster their impending lawsuit, Richard launched a neighborhood-wide evidence-gathering campaign against Marcus. He encouraged residents to meticulously log and report any activity at Marcus's house that could be construed as operating an illegal business. Mrs. Henderson, his ever-reliable informant from across the street, became particularly zealous. A friend visiting Marcus for coffee? Suspicious client meeting, a courier delivering a thick legal brief from the Supreme Court clerk's office, related, of course, to one of Marcus's ongoing federal cases. Receiving packages of illicit materials, Marcus working late in his study, light spilling from the window as he reviewed case law or drafted opinions. Nocturnal activities of a clearly criminal nature. Every innocent act was twisted through the lens of Richard's paranoia and prejudice. The public denunciations escalated. Richard, no longer content with just his golf cart loudspeaker, began holding impromptu neighborhood safety briefings on his own front lawn. He'd stand on a stepladder, addressing a small crowd of his most ardent supporters and a few curious, intimidated onlookers. "Friends, neighbors," he'd declaim, his voice quivering with manufactured outrage. "The illegal enterprise on Sycamore Street continues unabated. This man, this Tate, he flouts our rules, he disrespects our community. He's a fraud, a con artist, preying on who knows who. But fear not, your HOA is fighting back. We are taking him to court. We will protect Oak Haven." The complicit neighbors grew bolder in their harassment, fueled by Richard's rhetoric. The occasional piece of trash thrown into Marcus's yard became a regular occurrence. Anonymous, insulting notes were left on his doorstep. One morning, he found one of his car tires deliberately deflated. He overheard a group of teenagers, clearly parroting their parents, laughing as they walked past his house. "That's where the fake lawyer lives. My dad says he's going to get kicked out soon." Another conversation between two women drifted over the fence. "Did you hear? Richard's actually suing him. Serves him right. Who does he think he is, putting up that awful sign? This isn't some inner-city slum." The poison was spreading. How could a community turn so quickly, so viciously on a man they didn't even know, based on the lies of one petty tyrant? Marcus, amidst this siege, continued his life with a remarkable, almost unnerving, outward composure. He knew that reacting with anger would only feed Richard's narrative. Instead, he documented. His security camera captured the faces of the teenagers deflating his tire. He saved every threatening note, every slanderous HOA newsletter. He continued his demanding work as a federal judge, often rising before dawn to commute to his chambers downtown, returning late, the weight of real justice on his shoulders, only to be met with the absurdity of Oak Haven's manufactured crisis. The hints of his true identity, of course, continued to be hilariously, tragically misinterpreted by Richard and his spies. One Saturday, a plain black sedan with government plates discreetly parked down the street from Marcus's house. Two serious-looking individuals in conservative suits, his U.S. Marshal security detail doing a periodic, low-profile check-in due to a sensitive case he was presiding over, were observed by Mrs. Henderson. She immediately called Richard, her voice trembling. "Richard! They're here, men in black, government car. They're watching his house. He must be a spy, or maybe the feds are finally onto his scams, just like you said." Richard, puffed up, told the HOA board, "You see? Even the government is suspicious of this Tate character. My instincts are never wrong." Another time, Marcus was on his porch, on a secure conference call with several other federal judges from across the country, discussing proposed changes to federal sentencing guidelines. His voice, though low, carried. Richard, who was coincidentally trimming his prize roses nearby, overheard snippets. Mandatory minimums, judicial discretion, circuit split, en banc review. He rushed to tell his wife, "He's talking in code, mandatory minimums, judicial discretion. It's a criminal conspiracy. He's probably planning a heist or jury tampering. This man is more dangerous than we ever imagined." Even Marcus's attempt to formally clarify the nature of his sign backfired spectacularly. In a written response to one of the HOA's increasingly aggressive letters, he stated, "Please be advised that Tate Law, Civil Rights and Community Advocacy, represents a pro bono initiative to provide free legal assistance to underserved individuals facing civil rights violations. It is not a for-profit commercial enterprise." Richard waved this letter triumphantly at an HOA meeting. Aha! He admits it. He admits he's not making any money. So it is a fraud? A front? Why else would a supposed lawyer work for free unless he was up to something no good, trying to lure in victims? The logic was so twisted, so breathtakingly ignorant, it was almost an art form. The pressure on Marcus was immense, not just the harassment, but the deep professional insult. Here he was, a man who had dedicated his life to upholding the Constitution, to ensuring equal justice under the law, being accused of being a lawbreaker, a fraud, a menace, by people who wouldn't know a tort from a teapot. He found himself reviewing not just the HOA's ridiculous bylaws, but federal civil rights statutes, particularly those pertaining to housing discrimination and harassment based on race and interference with professional activities. His quiet hours were no longer just for judicial work. They were for meticulously preparing a counter-assault that would not only defend his personal rights, but also serve as a stark lesson to abusive HOAs everywhere. The day finally arrived, when a process server looking deeply uncomfortable handed Marcus an official court summons. The Oak Haven Homeowners Association, plaintiff versus Marcus Tate, defendant. The lawsuit demanded the immediate removal of the offensive and illegal sign, payment of all outstanding fines and legal fees, now inflated to over $5,000, and a permanent injunction preventing Marcus from engaging in any law-related activities on his Oak Haven property. A hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday at the local county courthouse. Richard Thornton was ecstatic. He organized a Victory in Sight barbecue on the community green, boasting to everyone about how he had cornered the shyster and was about to cleanse Oak Haven of this blight once and for all. He even had a banner made, Oak Haven HOA, upholding standards, protecting property values. He felt invincible, the hero of his own small, prejudiced world. Marcus looked at the summons, then at the calendar. He noted the date and time of the county court hearing. He then made a call to the chief clerk of the federal district court, where he presided. "Good morning, Ms. Rodriguez," he said, his voice calm and professional. "Just a couple of scheduling notes for my docket next Tuesday. I will be unavailable between 9 a.m. and approximately 11 a.m. due to a personal legal matter I need to attend to at the county courthouse." He paused. "However, please ensure courtroom 3B is kept clear and fully staffed from 11:30 a.m. onwards. I anticipate I may need to convene an emergency session there myself. Yes, a rather compelling civil rights matter has come to my attention that may require immediate judicial intervention. Thank you." He hung up the phone. A very faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. Richard Thornton wanted his day in court. Marcus Tate was about to give him one he would never, ever forget. The scales of justice were about to be balanced, with a very firm hand. The county courtroom was abuzz. Richard Thornton sat at the plaintiff's table, flanked by a harried-looking local lawyer, a smug, self-satisfied smirk plastered on his face. His Oak Haven HOA supporters filled the gallery, whispering excitedly, eager to witness the final humiliation of Marcus Tate. When Marcus entered, dressed in a simple, respectable dark suit, looking every bit the defendant, a wave of derisive chuckles rippled through Thornton's contingent. The local judge, a weary-looking man named Henderson, called the case. Oak Haven Homeowners Association versus Marcus Tate. Mr. Albright, representing the plaintiff, you may proceed. The HOA's lawyer launched into a lengthy, pompous argument, detailing how Marcus Tate's unauthorized and unsightly commercial sign violated numerous HOA bylaws, created a visual nuisance, and how Mr. Tate had defiantly refused all reasonable requests for compliance. He painted Marcus as an uncooperative troublemaker and demanded immediate injunctive relief, removal of the sign, all accrued fines, and legal costs. Richard Thornton nodded along, beaming, occasionally interjecting with the self-important, "That's right." When the lawyer finished, Judge Henderson turned to Marcus. "Mr. Tate, do you have legal counsel or do you wish to represent yourself?" Marcus rose. "Your Honor, I will be representing myself. However," he continued, his voice calm but carrying a new, almost imperceptible weight, "before I address the specifics of this rather frivolous complaint, I believe there is a more pressing matter of judicial protocol and a potential conflict of federal interest that this court, and indeed the plaintiffs, should be made aware of regarding the ongoing actions against a serving federal officer." A confused murmur went through the courtroom. Judge Henderson looked puzzled. "A federal officer, Mr. Tate?" Marcus didn't answer directly. Instead, he did something utterly unexpected. He walked, not towards the witness stand, but with measured, deliberate steps, towards the empty elevated judge's bench. The local bailiff tensed, then looked utterly bewildered. Richard Thornton scoffed loudly. "What in God's name does he think he's doing? Is he impersonating an officer of the court now?" Contempt. As Marcus reached the dais, he turned. From a leather satchel he'd placed beside his chair, he retrieved a folded black judicial robe. With practiced movements, he unfolded it and slipped it on. It settled perfectly on his shoulders. He then stepped up onto the dais, walked to the center chair, and sat down. He picked up the gavel that lay there. The courtroom was plunged into a stunned, disbelieving silence. Richard Thornton's jaw dropped. His lawyer looked like he'd seen a ghost. The HOA supporters were frozen, their smug expressions replaced with gaping mouths and wide, terrified eyes. Bang! The sound of the gavel striking the bench echoed through the silent room with an undeniable, shocking authority. "This ad hoc session of the United States District Court for the Southern District is now convened," Marcus Tate declared, his voice no longer that of a defendant, but of a federal judge, imbued with the full weight of the United States Constitution. "I am Judge Marcus Tate, presiding." He looked directly at Richard Thornton, whose face had turned a ghastly shade of pale. "Mr. Thornton, it appears you and the Oakhaven Homeowners Association have brought a complaint against me in this county. Venue. However, your campaign of harassment, vandalism, defamation, and racially motivated intimidation against me, a sitting federal judge, over the past several weeks, now elevates this matter significantly," he continued, his voice like chilled steel. "The Tate Law, Civil Rights and Community Advocacy, sign you so crudely defaced was, in fact, for my pro bono office from which I intended to offer free legal assistance to victims of discrimination, victims of precisely the kind of bigoted abuse you and your association have been perpetrating." He gestured towards his satchel again. "I have video evidence of your contractors spray painting my sign under your observation. I have recordings of your slanderous loudspeaker announcements calling me a fraud and a shyster. I have a collection of your libelous online posts and the racist comments they incited. I have documented the trash thrown in my yard, the vandalism to my property, and the systematic attempts to intimidate me and interfere with my professional duties. These actions, Mr. Thornton," Judge Tate's voice hardened, "are not merely violations of HOA bylaws. They constitute potential violations of federal civil rights statutes, including the Fair Housing Act and conspiracy to interfere with the duties of a federal officer. Such matters fall under federal jurisdiction." As he spoke these words, the main courtroom doors swung open. 2 men and a woman in dark suits, displaying FBI credentials, entered swiftly and purposefully. They were accompanied by 2 uniformed U.S. Marshals. And, given the clear evidence of a conspiracy to violate civil rights, the destruction of property related to that advocacy, and the targeted harassment of a federal judicial officer, Judge Tate announced, his eyes locking onto Richard Thornton's, "The Federal Bureau of Investigation has been duly notified and has commenced an investigation." The lead FBI agent stepped forward. "Richard Thornton," he said, his voice devoid of emotion, "you are under arrest for conspiracy to violate civil rights, malicious destruction of property, and witness intimidation." Thornton let out a strangled cry, a sound of pure, unadulterated terror. He stumbled backwards, collapsing into his chair, his body shaking uncontrollably. "No, this can't be. He's really a judge?" he babbled, looking wildly at his now ashen-faced lawyer. "It was just a sign, a tacky sign. The—" Gallery erupted. "A federal judge!" someone shrieked. "Thornton sued a federal judge? He's finished! We're all finished!" Panic swept through the HOA supporters. Judge Tate banged the gavel again. "Order! Order in this court!" He looked at the cowering Richard Thornton, now being handcuffed by the FBI agents. "Mr. Thornton, You sought to use the law as a weapon of prejudice and personal vendetta. You will now experience the full, impartial weight of the law you so clearly disrespect. Justice, sir, often knocks on the doors of those who believe they are above it. He then addressed the stunned HOA lawyer. Counselor, your frivolous case against me in this county court is hereby dismissed with prejudice. I suggest you advise your clients, the remaining members of the Oakhaven HOA board, that they are also under federal investigation. This session is adjourned. The downfall of Richard Thornton and the Oakhaven HOA was swift and brutal. Thornton was convicted on multiple federal charges and sentenced to prison. The HOA was dismantled by federal court order, its assets seized to pay the $3 million judgment awarded to Judge Tate in his civil countersuit for damages, defamation, and civil rights violations. The video of Thornton's cronies spray painting the Tate Law sign, now with the full context of Judge Tate's identity and Thornton's arrest in court, became a viral sensation, a 45 million view testament to arrogance meeting immovable. Justice. Judge Marcus Tate, with the settlement funds, established the Tate Civil Rights Center, a non-profit organization providing free legal aid to victims of discrimination and HOA abuse across the state. He also penned a book, The Gavel and the Gatekeepers, A Federal Judge's Stand Against Suburban Tyranny, which became an instant bestseller, demystifying civil rights law for the common citizen. Its charter explicitly barred any former member of the Oakhaven HOA involved in the harassment campaign from receiving services or serving in any capacity. The final scene. Several years later. Richard Thornton, in a drab prison uniform, is part of a supervised work crew, sweeping trash outside, the very county courthouse where his downfall began. He looks gaunt, broken, a shadow of his former self. He pauses, leaning on his broom, and sees a television in a nearby office window broadcasting a local news segment. Judge Marcus Tate, looking distinguished and resolute, is giving the keynote address at the annual fundraising gala for the Tate Civil Rights Center. Justice is not a concept to be trifled with, nor a sign to be defaced, nor a right to be denied, Judge Tate is saying, his voice powerful and unwavering. It is the bedrock of our society. Do not attempt to destroy it, for it is, and always will be, far stronger and more enduring than any prejudice, any petty tyranny, any wall of ignorance you can erect. The camera cuts from Thornton's tear-filled, despairing eyes to the gleaming, illuminated sign above the entrance of the bustling Tate Civil Rights Center. It reads, Tate Civil Rights Center. Justice endures. The imagined audience would be giving a standing ovation. That's not just poetic justice, that's judicial karma. Best courtroom scene ever. Judge Tate is a national hero. The gavel had fallen, and justice had truly been served.